Mark was used to silence. The outpost where he lived was far away from Earth and even farther from any busy colony. It was a lonely station built on a rock that circled a small red star. To most people, it was nothing but a forgotten place with old equipment, but to Mark it was his duty. He was there to watch, to record, and to send reports. That was all. Every day looked the same. The machines hummed, the metal walls stayed cold, and the sky outside showed only stars. Mark sometimes wondered if anyone remembered he was out there. Still, he stayed at his post. Humans had always survived by being patient, and he told himself patience was his weapon. That night began no different. Mark was sitting at the control desk scanning the monitors when a soft alarm buzzed. It was not the loud warning of an attack, but a quiet signal. Something had touched the outer sensors. Mark frowned. Nothing should be out there. The system was too far from trade routes and no one had visited the station for months. He stood up and checked the screen again. The signal was real. Something small was approaching the airlock. His heart beat faster. He thought of pirates or maybe a lost ship. He reached for the old rifle that leaned against the wall, though he had never used it. The camera feed showed only a shadow. The lights outside the station flickered, then went dark. Mark felt the silence grow heavier. He went to the airlock door, listening to the sound of the inner locks turning. Someone or something was coming inside. The door slid open with a slow hiss. At first, he saw only a tall shape covered in strange armor. The figure stepped inside without a word. Mark raised his rifle halfway, unsure if he should aim. The stranger stopped, standing still like a statue. Then, to his surprise, the figure lifted a hand and began to remove the armor. Piece by piece, the heavy plating came off. A helmet dropped with a dull sound. The armor across the chest opened and fell away. The stranger was not a machine, but a living being beneath. Mark's breath caught. The one standing before him was a woman, though not fully human. Her skin carried a pale silver tone and her eyes glowed faintly, like light reflected off water. She was tall, stronger than any person Mark had seen, but her face held something calm, almost tired. She dropped the last piece of armor to the floor and stood there quietly. She made no move forward, no sudden action. She only looked at him, waiting. Mark lowered his rifle slightly but kept his grip. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice shaking more than he wanted. The woman did not answer at once. She studied his face as if measuring his courage. Then she spoke, her voice low but clear. "My name is Nira. I come from far away." Her words surprised him. The accent was strange, yet she spoke his language well enough. Mark felt his mouth dry. "This station, it's restricted. Why are you here?" Instead of answering, she tilted her head. "I removed my armor because I wished to show trust. I wait for your reaction. Will you meet me with fear, or will you face me as an equal?" Mark felt the air grow heavy around them. He had expected an enemy, a thief, or a machine. Instead, he was faced with a test. He could panic, he could run, or he could stand steady. His hands shook on the rifle, but he forced himself to lower it fully. Slowly, he set it against the wall. "I don't know what you want," he said carefully, "but I'm listening." For the first time, Nira's expression softened. It was not quite a smile, but her eyes no longer glowed so sharply. She stepped closer, though still giving him space. "I have been watching your kind," she said. "I needed to see if a human could look at me without fear. Many would have turned away already. You did not." Mark felt his chest tighten. He was just a lone watchman, forgotten by his own people. Yet here was someone saying his reaction mattered. He did not understand why, but he felt the weight of it. The silence stretched. The station lights flickered above them, and the sound of the machines returned in the background. But the room no longer felt the same. The air seemed charged with meaning, as if something larger than both of them had begun. Mark nodded slowly. "You chose the wrong outpost if you're looking for important people." "I'm no one special," Nira shook her head. "Sometimes it is not the important ones who decide the future. Sometimes it is the ones who are ready to face what they do not know." Her words sank deep into him. Mark realized this meeting was no accident. She had come for a reason, and his choice tonight could change more than just his quiet life. As she stood there waiting, Mark finally understood. Her quiet entrance, her bold act of removing armor, and her calm patience were all meant to test him. She wanted to see not his strength of arms, but his strength of heart, and by lowering his weapon and choosing to listen, he had given her the reaction she sought. Mark had never been so unsure of himself. The alien woman, Nira, stood before him with calm eyes, waiting as if every second was a question he had to answer. He had lowered his weapon, but his mind still raced. Why was she here? Why did she say she came to test him? The small station felt even smaller now. The walls seemed to press in, and the steady hum of the machine sounded louder. Mark cleared his throat, trying to find steady words. You came all this way, just to see how I'd react? Nira gave a slow nod. Her silver-toned face showed no trickery, only patience. Yes, my people needed to know if humans are ready. I was sent to look into the eyes of one of you. Not a leader, not a soldier, but someone ordinary. If an ordinary human can face me without fear, then maybe your kind is ready for what is coming. Mark blinked at her. He felt the weight of her words, though he still did not fully understand. What exactly is coming? She did not answer at once. Instead, she studied him again, her glowing eyes almost too sharp to hold. She lifted a hand and reached toward the table near the wall. Slowly, she placed down a small object made of dark metal. It looked like a cube, marked with strange lines that shifted faintly like water rippling. This is a memory stone, she said. It carries the voices of my people. It holds warnings. Mark reached out but stopped his hand just above the cube. And you're just giving this to me? I show you this because you did not run, she replied. Most would have shouted for weapons. Many would have tried to kill me before speaking. But you listened first. That is why you are my choice. Mark let his hand rest on the cube at last. It was warm, almost alive. He looked back at Nira. I'm no one's choice. I'm just a man stuck on this station because no one else wanted it. Nira tilted her head slightly, her silver hair sliding across her shoulder. Do you think bravery lives only in the great cities? Do you think only the high command matters? No, bravery is in the quiet places too. Sometimes it is hidden, waiting. Sometimes it takes only one person. Mark felt his throat tighten. He wanted to argue, but the way she spoke left no space for doubt. For the first time in a long while, he felt seen. The cube in his hand pulsed faintly. Nira motioned for him to place it on the table's surface. When he did, the lines on the cube glowed brighter and the small room filled with a faint light. A voice rose from it, not human, not entirely clear, but strong enough for him to understand. Beware the Velan, the voice said. They move across the stars, leaving only ashes. They seek control. They seek silence. They will come for you. The light faded. The cube became dark again. Mark sat frozen, his hands pressed against the table. His chest felt heavy, as if all the air had been pulled away. He turned toward Nira, his voice rough. That wasn't just a story, was it? This is real, Nira nodded. It is real. The Valen are not far from your space. They see new species as prey. My world fought them, and we lost many. I was chosen to search for allies. I came here not to Earth because I needed to know how humans would act when faced with the unknown. Mark stood slowly, running a hand through his hair. He wanted to laugh at the madness of it all. He had been sent here to watch over empty space, and now he was being told the galaxy itself was in danger. Yet the look in Nira's eyes told him this was no trick. And my reaction, he muttered. That's what mattered to you? Yes, she said simply. If even one human can stand steady, then I believe more will follow. That is how your kind fights, is it not? One stands, then another, and soon you are not alone. Mark thought of the stories he had read as a boy, of explorers, of soldiers, of people who dared to fight against impossible odds. Maybe she was right. Humanity had always moved forward when someone took the first step. He looked at her again, this time with less doubt. So what now? Do I send a report? Do I call the fleet? Nira shook her head. Not yet. The fleet would not believe. Leaders think in numbers and strategies. I need to show them something more than words. That is why I must stay here with you. I will train you. I will teach you what I know. If you can learn, if you can fight beside me, then your people will listen when the time comes. Mark stared at her. You want to train me? I'm no soldier. Then you will learn, she said firmly. You will learn fast because the shadows move closer every day. And when the time comes, your reaction will matter again. Not just for you, but for all of your kind. The silence that followed was heavy, but it was not the silence of loneliness anymore. It was the silence of something beginning. Mark looked at the empty outpost around him, once forgotten and dull, and realized it had just become the first spark of something far larger. Nira waited for his answer, her eyes steady on him. Mark finally nodded, his voice low but firm. Then teach me. Her calm face shifted into something close to a smile. She had tested him, and he had chosen. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, Mark did not feel alone in the silence. Mark did not sleep that night. He sat at the small desk in the control room with the strange cube resting in front of him. Every time he looked at it, he remembered the voice. "Beware the Velan. They will come for you." The words kept echoing inside his head. Nira stayed quiet most of the night, watching him as if studying his every movement. She seemed patient, as though she had all the time in the world. Mark, however, felt the weight of every second. His little station, once nothing more than a boring duty post, now felt like the edge of a storm. Finally, he spoke. "You said they're close. How close?" Nira stepped forward, her silver eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. "Closer than your leaders believe. They move slowly but never stop. They strip one system after another until nothing is left. My people thought we could fight them alone. We were wrong. Many worlds burned before we understood." Mark clenched his fists. "Why us? Why humans? We've barely learned how to reach the stars. What can we do against them?" "You underestimate yourselves," Nira said. Her voice was calm but sharp, as if cutting away his doubt. "Your kind has something many lack. I saw it when you lowered your weapon instead of firing. You do not surrender easily. Even in fear, you move forward. The Velan will learn that you are not prey." Her words gave Mark a strange mix of fear and pride. He wanted to believe her, but the thought of an enemy so powerful made his stomach twist. He turned his gaze back to the cube. "If this is true, I should send a warning. Earth needs to know." Nira shook her head. "Not yet. If you send the message now, your leaders will dismiss it as nonsense. They will say it is a trick or a broken recording. Humans trust proof more than words. That is why you and I must prepare first." Mark leaned back in his chair, rubbing his face. He had spent years watching empty screens and empty skies, and now he was being told the galaxy depended on him. It felt unreal. "So I just sit here while entire worlds fall?" Nira's eyes narrowed. "No, you will train. You will learn. When the time comes, you will fight beside me. Then we will show your people the truth." Mark gave a short laugh, though there was no humor in it. "You say that like it's simple. I'm no soldier. I can fix wires and run reports, but I've never led anyone." "Good," Nira said quickly. "That makes you honest. Leaders who think they are strong often break first. You are uncertain, but you will grow. That is what humans do. You adapt." Mark stared at her, searching for any sign of doubt in her face, but she looked completely certain. He wished he had even half of her confidence. The station lights flickered, drawing his attention back to the monitors. The outer sensors showed empty space, but Mark no longer trusted the silence. He spoke again, his voice lower. "Tell me about the Velan. If I'm going to prepare, I need to know what I'm up against." Nira walked closer, her armor pieces piled in the corner like a shed skin. She leaned against the wall and crossed her arms. "They are not like us. They do not seek allies. They see every world as a resource, every life as fuel for their power. Their ships are vast and move like storms. Their soldiers are bred for war without mercy, without fear. But even they have weaknesses. They do not expect resistance from those they consider small." Mark swallowed hard. "And we're small?" Her gaze softened slightly. "Perhaps. But small does not mean weak. Your people have risen from nothing before. Fire, steel, machines, you built each step yourselves. The Velan have forgotten what it means to struggle. That is why I believe you can stand against them." For a long moment the room was quiet except for the steady hum of the engines. Mark felt the weight of her words pressing on him. He thought of Earth, of crowded cities, of families who had no idea of the danger moving closer. He thought of children who would never see the stars if the Velan came. His chest tightened. "You said my reaction mattered," Mark said finally. "Well, here's my reaction now. If what you say is true, then I can't just sit here and do nothing. I'll train. I'll prepare. But when the time comes, I'll fight." Nira's lips curved into a faint smile. It was the first real smile he had seen from her. "That is the answer I hoped for. You will not face this alone. I will guide you. And when your leaders see the truth through your actions, they will listen." Mark stood, feeling taller than he had in years. The fear did not vanish, but it no longer controlled him. He reached out and touched the dark cube once more. It stayed silent, but the memory of its warning burned in his mind. For the first time, Mark understood that his lonely outpost was not the end of the line. It was the beginning. The galaxy was changing, and he had a part to play. Nira placed a hand on his shoulder, steady and strong. The storm is coming, she said. But storms can be faced. Together we will show them that humans are not prey. Mark met her glowing eyes, and for the first time since she arrived, he felt steady. He was not alone anymore. The war had not yet begun, but already humanity had taken its first step into it. Days began to pass in a rhythm Mark had never known before. The lonely outpost that once felt like a prison now became a place of change. Nira stayed with him, and every hour was filled with something new. She did not waste time. She taught him as if each sunrise could be the last before the Valen arrived. Mark's body was not ready at first. He had grown used to long hours at the desk, not battles or drills. Nira woke him early and kept him moving. She showed him stretches that worked muscles he never knew he had. She placed weights in his hands, not human-made but alien, crafted from strange metals that seemed heavier than they looked. You must learn to push beyond what feels enough, she said. The Valen will not wait for you to catch your breath. Mark groaned as he struggled through the exercises, sweat dripping down his face, but he refused to stop. He knew she was right. He remembered her words, storms can be faced. If the storm was coming, then he had to be ready to stand in it. When his body began to grow stronger, Nira taught him combat drills. She handed him a blade of sharp blue metal, lighter than steel but stronger than anything he had ever held. At first his swings were clumsy, his balance weak. Nira corrected every mistake with calm but firm words. Your stance is too open. Your hands move before your eyes. Focus, Mark. Every strike must be clear. He listened, step by step, until his movements grew smoother. His arms ached, but each day his control improved. Nira never praised too quickly, but when she finally gave a small nod, Mark felt a spark of pride. In the evenings, she showed him technology beyond his understanding. She stripped open her discarded armor and revealed its core systems. Inside were circuits that shifted like flowing liquid and crystals that glowed with stored energy. This is not only protection, she explained. It is memory. Each piece remembers how it was struck, how it bent, it learns. That is why it is strong. Mark leaned closer, fascinated. Human suits were heavy, simple, and stiff, but her armor seemed alive, a second skin that adapted. He asked countless questions, and though Nira did not answer all, she taught him enough to make his mind race. At night, they practiced stealth. She moved through the station's narrow halls without a sound, showing him how to breathe lightly, how to keep weight balanced on his feet. The Valen see strength, but they forget to look for silence, she said. Silence is a weapon. Mark followed her steps again and again, stumbling at first, but soon finding a rhythm. He realized his station, once just metal walls and old machinery, had become a training ground. Every corner, every shadow now carried purpose. But it was not only his body she trained. Nira tested his mind as well. She gave him riddles, strategies, and simulations on the console. She set him against false fleets, forcing him to make decisions quickly. If you freeze, you lose, she reminded him. If you hesitate, others fall. Better a wrong choice than no choice at all. At first, Mark failed often. His plans collapsed, his fleets destroyed in the simulations. He grew frustrated, slamming his fists against the desk. But Nira remained calm. Failure is the path, she said. Do not fear it. Learn from it. So he kept trying. Each time he lasted longer. Each time he adapted a little faster. The failures hurt less, and the small victories meant more. He began to see patterns, to think ahead instead of only reacting. His mind grew sharper, not just his body. Through it all, Nira never told him more than she thought he was ready to hear. She still kept secrets, still carried the weight of her people's loss. Yet sometimes in the quiet moments between drills, her guarded face softened. She shared fragments of her world, mountains of crystal, rivers that glowed under two moons, skies filled with winged ships. Her voice carried both pride and sorrow. Mark listened closely. He realized her training was not only about fighting, it was also about trust. Each piece of knowledge she gave him was another piece of herself. One night, after hours of drills, Mark sat on the floor of the training room, exhausted. His chest rose and fell heavily, his arms shaking from the last round of strikes. Nira stood over him, her silver eyes steady. You are stronger, she said. Mark gave a tired laugh. I feel like I'm falling apart. That is because you grow. Weakness breaks. Growth hurts but holds. He looked up at her, sweat dripping from his brow. Do you really believe we can face the Valen? That humans can make a difference? Nira crouched beside him, her voice quiet but firm. Yes, I believed it when I chose this station. And every day you train, I believe it more. Humanity's strength is not in ships or weapons. It is in the will to keep standing even when the storm strikes. That is what the Velan do not understand. That is why you must be ready. Mark nodded, the doubt in his chest shrinking. He had never thought of himself as important. Never thought his life mattered beyond sending reports into empty space. But now, every lesson, every strike, every moment of pain carried meaning. He was no longer just waiting for orders. He was preparing for a fight that could decide the future. The station, once silent and empty, now echoed with the sounds of drills, of blades cutting air, of footsteps moving in shadows. Mark was not the same man who had watched the door open that first night. He was becoming something else. And in the shadows of space, unseen but certain, the storm continued to draw closer. The days of training passed quickly, but Mark never felt they were enough. Every time Nira pushed him harder, he saw how far he still had to go. Yet deep inside, he also felt himself changing. His arms were stronger, his reflexes sharper, and his mind faster. He no longer felt like a forgotten guard on a lonely outpost. He felt like someone preparing for something greater. One evening, while they were running another combat drill in the narrow hall, the station's alarm suddenly blared. This was not the soft buzz of a drifting signal, but the sharp cry of danger. Red lights flashed across the walls. Mark froze for a second, his heart leaping into his throat. Nira turned toward the console, her silver eyes narrowing. They are here. Mark rushed to the main screen. The sensors showed 3 ships moving into the system. They were sharp, angular shapes, darker than space itself. Their outlines seemed wrong, almost alive. Mark shivered as he stared. Those are Velan ships, aren't they? Nira nodded. Her voice was steady, though her tone carried weight. Raiders. Not the full fleet, but enough to test this place. Mark's chest tightened. They're coming here? Yes, and we must show them humans are not easy prey. Mark felt fear grip him, but he remembered her lessons. He forced himself to breathe, to think. What do we do? Nira moved quickly, strapping pieces of her armor back onto her body. Even half-broken, the strange plate seemed to hum with power. She handed Mark a weapon she had built from spare parts, a rifle fused with alien energy cells. You fight beside me. Remember what you learned. Trust your instincts. The station shook as the first blast struck its outer hull. Mark nearly stumbled, but Nira stood firm. He ran to the console, activating the defense grid. Old cannons rose from the outpost's surface, their joints stiff from years of silence. They fired beams of light into the dark, but the Velan ships moved like shadows, dodging with unnatural speed. They're too fast, Mark said through clenched teeth. Then strike where they do not expect. Nira replied. Set the cannons to random fire. Do not aim where they are. Aim where they will be. Mark adjusted the settings, sweat dripping down his face. The cannons shifted, their beams sweeping across the void in sudden, unpredictable arcs. One Velan ship veered too late, caught by a strike. It shuddered and spun away, smoke trailing behind it. A small spark of hope lit in Mark's chest. We got one. Good, Nira said. But do not celebrate yet. The other 2 ships broke formation and closed in. With a screech of metal, their claws tore into the outer docking ring. Alarms screamed as air hissed through cracks in the hull. The outpost trembled again. They're boarding, Mark said. Then we meet them here, Nira answered. The inner airlock groaned as something pressed against it. Mark gripped his weapon tightly, his palms wet with sweat. His heart pounded so hard he thought it would burst. But when he looked at Nira, she was calm, blade in hand, her stance steady. Her presence steadied him. The airlock burst open. Figures stormed in, tall armored shapes with limbs too long, their faces hidden behind smooth masks. Their movements were sharp, unnatural, like insects. The Velan soldiers hissed as they entered, weapons glowing in their claws. Now, Nira said. She moved like lightning, her blade slicing through the first soldier's weapon. Sparks lit the air as she struck again, cutting deep into the armored chest. Mark raised his rifle and fired, the alien energy blasting holes through another. The recoil nearly knocked him back, but he held firm. The fight was chaos. The Velan pressed forward with speed and strength, their claws striking the walls, their weapons burning holes in the metal. Mark ducked behind a console, firing bursts of energy whenever he saw movement. Nira spun through the enemy line, every strike precise, her silver eyes glowing brighter with each motion. One soldier lunged at Mark, its claw raised high. Mark reacted without thinking, rolling to the side, then firing upward. The blast hit the creature's chest and it fell with a heavy crash. His breath came fast, but he did not freeze. He remembered Nira's words. If you hesitate, others fall. Together they pushed back the raiders. One by one, the Velan fell until only silence filled the room again. The floor was littered with broken armor and scorched marks. The air smelled of smoke and ozone. Mark leaned against the wall, his chest heaving. His arms trembled from the weight of the rifle. He looked at Nira, who stood tall, her blade dripping with sparks from the broken suits. We stopped them, he said, half in disbelief. Nira nodded slowly. Yes, and now the galaxy will know. Mark frowned. Know what? That humanity does not hide. That you can fight. Mark glanced at the fallen enemies, then out the window at the stars beyond. He realized this was only the beginning. The Velan now knew that a small outpost, guarded by one human and one stranger, could resist them. Word would spread among allies and among enemies. His fear was still there, but beneath it was something stronger. Pride. Humanity had faced its first clash with the Velan, and it had not broken. Nira sheathed her blade and looked at him with something close to respect. You fought well, Mark. You proved what I believed. The storm is here, but humans do not bow to storms. Mark straightened, still catching his breath. He had no reply, but he knew one thing for certain. This fight had changed everything. The lonely outpost was no longer forgotten. It had become the spark of resistance. The battle at the outpost had left Mark exhausted but alive. The Velan raiders were gone, their ships retreating into the dark of space. Yet victory brought no rest. Nira had insisted that they report the attack immediately, and now Mark found himself standing before a council he had never imagined meeting. The council chamber was vast and cold, filled with humans in uniforms of gray and blue. Their faces were tense, some skeptical, others anxious. Mark felt small among them, a single guard from a remote station. Nira walked beside him, silent but imposing. Her silver eyes scanned the room, sharp and unyielding. A senior officer, tall with graying hair, leaned forward. Mark, we received your report of an attack. Are you certain this was not a false alarm? Perhaps a misreading of sensors? Mark's hands were still shaking from the battle, but he spoke clearly. It was real. They were Velan ships. I fought them with Nira. We defended the station together. The raiders were fast, strong, and lethal. They will come again if we do not prepare. A murmur ran through the chamber. One of the council members, a younger woman, raised her voice. This sounds impossible. The Velan are myth, stories meant to warn new explorers. How can one human and an alien stop them? Nira stepped forward, her posture straight and commanding. I am not here to argue with myth. I am here to show what humans can do. This man, Mark, defended this station alone with me. That is proof enough of your potential. If humans act together, you can survive the coming storm. The room fell silent. Many looked at each other, unsure. The council had always trusted numbers, fleets, and weapons, not stories from a single outpost. Mark could feel their doubt pressing down on him. He swallowed hard and tried to steady his voice. You saw the attack on the monitors, he said. I know it was fast. I know it seems impossible. But I fought. We survived. And if the Velan come for Earth, they will not expect humans to resist. That is our advantage. A senior scientist raised his hand. Even if this is true, one station cannot change the outcome. How do we know more will follow? How do we know humanity is ready for a fight of this scale? Mark thought of the lessons Nira had taught him. The physical drills, the strategy simulations, the endless hours of learning to move silently, to act decisively. Everything had led to this moment. He met the scientist's eyes. We may be small, he said, but we adapt. We think, we learn, and we do not give up. You have not seen humans at their best, but one of us can inspire others. One of us can lead the first step. That first step is enough to change the tide. The chamber shifted. Some of the council members leaned forward, curious. Others frowned, still doubtful. Nira glanced at Mark, her silver eyes approving. She had chosen him because he could stand in front of doubt and speak truth. Now he was doing it. A military advisor spoke next, his tone harsh. Even if we believe your story, how can we fight an enemy we cannot see fully? The Velan are beyond our technology. They have strength we cannot match. We risk everything for hope? Mark's chest rose and fell. Yes, hope. Hope is what we have. And courage. Without hope, we cannot fight. Without courage, we cannot survive. If we wait for certainty, we will fall before we even start. But if we act together, even in small numbers, we can make a difference, Nira added softly. Your hesitation is natural. My people faced the same fear. But fear does not decide victory. Actions do. Mark's actions saved this station. Imagine what hundreds, thousands of humans could do if they believed they could stand. The chamber grew quiet. The words hung in the air. Doubt remained, but something else began to emerge. Interest, curiosity, the faint stir of belief. One of the older officers finally spoke, his voice steady but cautious. Very well. We will review the situation. We will send reconnaissance to confirm the threat. But your courage, Mark, and the presence of this ally Nira will be noted. Perhaps humanity is stronger than we imagined. Mark nodded. He felt relief but also responsibility. This was only the beginning. Convincing leaders was one step. Preparing for the real war was another. Nira placed a hand briefly on his shoulder, an unusual gesture of reassurance. You have done well. The council may still doubt, but they listened. That is enough for now. More will follow once they see what humans can do in action. Mark turned back to the large windows overlooking space. The stars seemed quieter now, almost waiting. He thought of the raiders, of their speed and power, and of what lay ahead. But he did not feel the same fear he had before. Training in the first battle had taught him that fear could be managed. Courage and action mattered more. The council continued to debate as Mark and Nira left the chamber. Mark's mind was racing, planning, thinking, remembering every lesson, every step of his training. He realized that humanity's strength was not just technology, not just fleets. It was the will to act, the courage to face the unknown, and the ability to learn quickly. Nira's voice broke his thoughts. Mark, remember this. Doubt will always follow. Fear will always follow. But your choices define what others will follow. Stand firm and they will follow you. Mark nodded, gripping the railing as he looked down at the quiet station. He understood now that the battle was not only against the Velan. It was against doubt, against hesitation, against the human fear of the unknown. For the first time, he felt that humanity's place in the galaxy could be earned. And he was ready to lead the first steps. Mark stood on the observation deck of the station, gazing at the stars. For weeks he had trained, fought, and convinced others of the Velan threat. Now the moment of truth had arrived. Scouts had confirmed the fleet of Velan ships moving closer. This was no longer a raid or a test. This was the beginning of the war. Nira appeared beside him, silent as ever. Her armor glimmered faintly under the lights, her eyes sharp and steady. They have seen your station survive. They know humans can resist, she said. Now the galaxy watches whether you will act or remain still. Mark clenched his fists. His body ached from weeks of drills and combat. His mind was full of strategy and warnings, yet he felt ready. We've trained, we've fought, and we've shown courage. But this is bigger than anything we faced before. Nira nodded. Exactly. That is why your choice matters. Humanity can stand or humanity can hide. Your actions tonight will define what follows. Mark looked at the small fleet that the council had gathered. It was tiny compared to what the Velan might bring, but it was all they had. He thought of the people he had inspired, of the scientists, soldiers, and ordinary citizens who had joined after hearing his report. Their eyes, filled with trust and determination, gave him courage. He turned to Nira. We cannot win by hiding. If we do nothing, Earth will fall without a fight. We must strike first, show them humans do not bow. Nira's eyes glimmered with approval. Then you have made your choice. I will guide you through this battle, but your will leads the way. Mark moved to the command console. He activated the station's defenses and aligned the fleet in formation. Every human ship carried more than weapons. They carried hope. The fleet was small, but their determination was enormous. The first Velan scouts appeared on the horizon. Their ships were dark, fast, and menacing. Mark took a deep breath. All units prepare. Fire only when I give the signal. We strike as one. Nira stood at his side, blade glowing. Focus, use the lessons. Trust your instincts. Lead them, Mark. As the Velan approached, the silence was broken by the sharp hum of weapons charging. The first shot rang out, a beam of energy cutting through the darkness. The Velan ship twisted, caught off guard by the sudden attack. Mark directed the fleet with careful commands. Each human pilot responded with precision, following his orders despite fear. Their coordination, built on weeks of preparation, surprised even him. Ships weaved through space, striking at weak points, retreating when necessary, and moving as one organism. The battle raged. Veylan ships attacked relentlessly, their claws and energy weapons tearing through metal. Mark's heart pounded, yet he remained steady, recalling every lesson Nira had taught him. He gave orders calmly, striking where the Veylan least expected. Nira moved among the smaller boarding ships, disabling enemy weapons and guiding human pilots. Her speed and strength made her seem unstoppable, yet she never took more than necessary. Mark realized the key was not power alone, but strategy, trust, and courage. Hours passed, though it felt like minutes. The Veylan pressed hard, yet human resilience held. Ships that seemed fragile survived through careful maneuvers and coordinated attacks. The station's defenses, once quiet and abandoned, now burned with energy, striking with precision. Finally, the Veylan flagship appeared, larger and more terrifying than any other ship. Mark's fleet froze for a moment, but he did not. He called out, "We fight together! Do not fear! Show them humans stand as one." The humans cheered, their fear replaced with determination. They surged forward in formation, attacking with everything they had. The Veylan flagship tried to break through, but the humans adapted, dodging, weaving, and striking at exposed engines. Mark saw an opening. "Now, Nira, strike their core!" Nira leaped, her blade cutting through the energy shield of the flagship. Sparks flew and alarms blared. The humans pressed the attack, exploiting the chaos Nira created. Slowly, the mighty ship faltered, caught by coordinated strikes from a fleet that seemed small but moved as one mind. The flagship shuddered, then exploded in a brilliant flash. The remaining Veylan ships scattered, retreating into the darkness. Silence returned, this time filled with relief, not fear. Mark sank into a chair, exhausted but alive. Around him, the fleet signaled their victory. The humans had won, not through numbers or overwhelming power, but through courage, strategy, and unity. Nira stood beside him, her eyes softening. "You did it, Mark. Humanity has taken its first step. You have shown that even the smallest force, guided by courage and will, can face the storm." Mark looked at the stars, still scattered and silent. "This is only the beginning. The Veylan will return. But now we are ready. Humanity will not hide anymore." Nira placed a hand briefly on his shoulder, a gesture of approval and trust. "And when they come again, you will lead and others will follow. That is the choice of humanity, to stand or to bow. Tonight you chose to stand." Mark nodded, finally understanding. The battle had not just been about survival. It had been about proving that humans could face the impossible and rise. In the vast darkness of space, against a seemingly unstoppable enemy, they had chosen courage, hope, and action. And for the first time in his life, Mark knew that being ordinary did not mean being powerless. He had become the spark that could ignite the galaxy,